pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to do so? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. We don't have any action items, but we have a study session, and the first one is the elementary and secondary handbook updates. So if you want to come forward, please.
Good afternoon, good evening. We have made some changes to our elementary handbook, and I'll share some of that with you today. Much of what we are going to walk through revolves around just cleaning up some of the language and bringing things together cohesively as an elementary group so that it's put together in a fashion that is much easier to read and more user-friendly and more up-to-date than what we had before. So as we kind of go through, actually, if we get to the attendance and absences page, I think it's the next one coming up down the line here. So we did make some changes, not necessarily to the attendance and absences piece, but within our handbook previously, it was listed under some of the district policy pieces that were already adopted through the school board. And so we wanted to put in some procedural pieces that we have at each of our elementary buildings that stress the importance of regular attendance for our students, as well as what can we do when your student might be absent. Does that become an unexcused absence? Is that an excused absence? And so on and so forth. So we just kind of cleaned that up and hopefully made it much more clear for our families to understand that important part of bringing our kids here, and then what are some of the ramifications if we're not doing what we need to be doing to get our kids here at school on time. So that was one update. The behaviors expectation, we added in the policy 529 that talks about parental notification if there's students who have shown some violent behavior, and how we're notifying teachers of that as well. And so we added that in so that parents know if there's been some sort of a behavior that would qualify under that policy, that we are reporting that to teachers in the next year so that teachers can be aware of that and understand how to best meet the needs of the kids and know that that's something that's coming their way too. The next change that we made, if we scroll down a little bit more, is in the bus part of it. Again, in the spirit of being more transparent, this part of our handbook in the past was please refer to the district website for the bus rules and regulations and so on and so forth. And so we wanted to get it onto this instead of having it be an additional place to go for our parents if they're accessing it online, or if they get it paper copy, they have it right in front of it. So this is stuff that we have taken directly from the website and directly from the communications that we've had with the bus company in the past, and we've placed it on this handbook for our families to see and to follow along as well. So no changes there, just becoming more transparent with that process. And moving down a little bit further, the emergency school closing section. Again, this was just more of a cleanup for us, where we added in the fact that we're using the automated instant alert messenger system to notify parents, but then also you can find that information on the different TV channels and the different news stations around us, as well as our Facebook page too. We also wanted to include the e-learning days that are also been a part of what we're doing here, so that parents had that information at their hands and just know that that's part of what we're looking for if there's a snow or some sort of emergency clothing, that we are incorporating and going to continue to incorporate the e-learning days for our families and our students during that time too. And you can kind of scroll along a little bit more. The homework section. Again, this was an area that was in need of some cleaning up on our elementary page, where we really took out a bunch of information that didn't really reflect what we were talking about and what we were advocating for our students when it came to homework. We understand that homework can be a part of a daily process for our students, but it's not something that we're necessarily saying a student at this age needs to have this much homework, or student in 5th grade needs to have this much homework, and things like that. But we really wanted to stress the part of it being something that's meaningful to the student and to the family, and that it's a part of how we can maybe reinforce some of the work that they're doing, and not necessarily you go home and get this done, and if it takes an hour to do it, then it takes an hour to do it. It's not what we want. We want our kids to be actively engaged with their homework and actively engaged with reading, most importantly, but also not something that's taking up too much time nor turning students off from the learning process. And I know parents have shared with us a lot that sometimes homework can be one of the most painful parts of the evening when kids get home, and we want to reduce that as much as we can. The Media Center, our media clerks, or our media teachers have done a little bit of updating to this part as well, just talking about accessing information and adding in the makerspace materials that are there, as well as what types of materials are checked out and when they can check them out as well. The recess section, Ashley, a little bit further down, we did change a little bit in that section where it talks about in the event of inclement weather. Inside recess kits are available for all classrooms. That's not something that we had in there before, but working with the SHIP grants, each of our elementary buildings at each grade level received indoor recess kits so that there's some sort of active opportunities for our students to be engaged with something recess related, I would suppose, whether it be beanbag toss or different things like that. We wanted to make sure that was there too. The student, school counselor, social worker section, that was also updated to include the school counselor. Previously, it just showed school social worker, and so having the elementary school counselors, we wanted to have that piece added in there as well. So that was an important piece, and that pretty much takes care of the changes that we made at the elementary level, the additions and cleanup that we did. Questions at all? Comments?
Hey, Nick, do we, or Mary Jo, have we translated this for families at all? Okay, that might be something we might want to talk with the success coaches.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I have a question. How is this communicated then to the families?
Yeah, that is a good question. When we have our not our open house, when we have our family interviews coming up in the next week or so, our teachers inform our parents that we have a paper copy of this if they would like to receive it in a paper copy, or we let them know that it's also available via our website and they can access it through that if they would prefer to just have a digital copy. But if they have the need to have a paper copy, we have that available to them and we can provide them with it at that point in time.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the schedule for orientation day for kindergarten.
The secondary update, Ken.
Oh,
So-
okay, I'm sorry. It's two different.
We're good if you want
there's
to. We don't
two.
have a lot.
Okay.
So,
So we've got Chris here for the Southwest Middle School update, and then Mark will be following up here in a minute.
so we basically updated 3 sections. Nikki Sievertson, the assistant principal, went through and just added some wordings is all we've done. It's a work in progress as we go through the year. We've only seen this for about 3-4 weeks now, so we have a working copy that as we read through it and find things we circle, so we'll have a much better one for you next fall. But we started with the attendance information. The basic part of that, if you want to go forward one there, we include the truancy information from Amy Geyer. She's a fantastic resource, and she moved down to start working with our 7th grade students, 6th and 7th grade students now. And so she gave us a lot of guidance on what to put in there. So we added all the wordings from the Freeborn County Law Enforcement Center to find out what we need to do to make sure these students are meeting their truancy. So we went out and did at the first, you'll get the automated phone call in the 3rd absence, along with a truancy letter, along with contact from Amy Geyer. So all that now is included in the wordings here. Additionally, what is an absence, what's a tardy? We included those definitions, and then the consequences through us and through the county for the attendance part of it. We moved to dress code. Southwest has a lot of signs with a lot of no's on them, so we're trying to change that message, and we're trying to go for a more positive feel. So we're starting with the handbook and the dress code. We eliminated all the know this, know that, know this, and instead gave examples of what we want the students to wear. Like short skirts, muscle shirts, and cut sides that expose the midriff are not in keeping with community standards, as opposed to no short shorts. So we're starting to change that wording, and then we went to the why, because everything we want to do starts with the why. So the purpose of a dress code is for students to dress appropriately and encourage learning. It's now in there like that instead of just being a negative part of the handbook. And then the last part we looked at here were just the updated policies that were passed on to us that I believe you guys are approving at the next meeting. And so all those are referenced to the website. To answer the question before you answer it, this is included in the handbooks, in the planners that the students get. They're due to come in 2 weeks. When they come in to check in, we give them a copy. This whole handbook's in the front, and all the links are in the book. And that's all we have for now for changes.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the high school then.
Good evening. Just a few minor changes after 4 years. You think the principal had it figured out, but we still got a couple things. School dance, we just clarified some things to help students understand what our expectations are. Over time, if we go back to the beginning in 2000, things have changed at the high school, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, so we just kind of spelled that out. We also gave clarifications on times and parent pickup and type of things like that. So that's pretty straightforward. Kids at first were like, oh my gosh, and then they realized, hold it, this makes sense. Then we talked about tardiness. We just cleaned up some language in our handbook, also talked about how we can be proactive with students. When students are able to drive to school, it makes it more difficult for them to get there on time for some reason. If the yellow limousine picks them up, they're there on time generally, but when they drive themselves, so we worked on some of that. One thing that we also spent a lot of time, and the tardiness and the plagiarism I worked with our department chairs on last spring. One of the things we're finding with plagiarism is we work with the kids and we explain what it is, but that concept of when I'm in the moment of trying to prepare something, they forget that. And they also forget the concept of I can reach out to my teacher and say, hold it, this has happened or that has happened. So instead of cutting or pasting or not citing someone, they rush through it and then it comes up as a poor decision. We're looking at being proactive with that and giving them the heads up on those type of things. So very minor changes to things. We also included in our handbook, thank you, Nick, for the reminder, the 529 policy and the e-learning. E-learning we really worked on. It was a great experience for our students last year, but concept versus reality. And so we made tweaks throughout the year, so hopefully now it's very smooth. Last couple, we had no concerns from parents or students, and the Google voicemail works really great in email, so I think that's a very good way of resolving those winter issues. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to the next one, the orientation day, and that's with Mary Jo Dorman and Kathy Niebor.
I'm just explaining kindergarten orientation. It's, we're trying it this year. It will be the Monday before school actually starts. So it's a chance for parents to come in and visit the classroom with their students. There's more time available to unpack the supplies. And we'll have other staff available to assist with that, which includes, we all know, taking pictures. Families love to do that the first day of school. Handle all the tears, and usually not from the kids, with the parents, and get them really ready to release their child for kindergarten. Teachers will be reading a story. We'll have a snack. We were able to get a grant, so all the families will leave with a Pete the Cat book. That's the newest hot book available with the publishers. So every child will walk away with their home to add another book to their collection. And Those who are new to the building will be able to take a tour at the end, so they can see all the places where their students will do art, music, and PE, as well as media, et cetera. And the teachers will be around, the specialist teachers will be around to assist in that. And then we also, Chris Quisley put together a little 3-minute YouTube video. So she will explain what kindergarten math looks like, things we focus on, and then kids will all be able to take home a deck of cards, and Chris will show them some number games to play at home. And so that's what our orientation looks like. Any questions?
It sounds like a great idea to take the edge off for those parents of the first-time kindergartners. I remember when my kids were in elementary, Mrs. Bonnerup said, whatever you do on the first day of school, have them take the bus, because there is more staff around, more help around to help them navigate. She said, if you need to drive behind the bus all the way to school, go ahead and do it, but have them ride the bus so that they can have that experience. So it's nice that the parents are able to get into the room and help the kids adjust ahead of time.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Kathy?
So we have the sixth graders coming all day on the 20th. The Thursday before that, we have an open house for both sixth and seventh graders where they're going to be able to come and get their schedules and do a tour of the school. But that first day, sixth graders are coming on the bus, are getting dropped off the exact way they would on the first day of school. And our goals are to welcome them, learn the layout of a new building. I'm sure our tears will mostly be from the students, not the parents at this point. But a chance to build relationships with the advisory staff and then focus on the engagement of all our students. One extra day of getting to know the students who are going to be in your advisory every day is a big step in getting these students engaged. So we're going to start the morning. They will not go to their first hour class. We're going to bring them all together into the little theater. We're going to have some music pumping. We're going to have a good speech by a principal or two, and we're going to introduce all the staff. We're going to give them tours of the building by their advisory, and so they'll be meeting with their advisory teacher for those first 2 hours. And then around lunch, we're running an abbreviated schedule with only 15-minute classes, so they get to learn the layout of the best way to get from place to place before those big, mean seventh graders come in the next day. So after they go through that schedule, we'll meet in the afternoon for the social contract part, which is part of the culture at Southwest. They get to determine the main goals of the year and learn what they're going to do, and we make posters and put them up in every room. So they're going to learn how to do that on Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to go over the Chromebook expectations. This will be the first time those students have a device in hand to take home. So we want to make sure they know the correct way to do that and the correct behaviors. Some team building activities in the gym with the entire 274-member class. And then dismissing bus by bus so they know exactly where to go, because Southwest is a busy place in the afternoon from what I hear. I've never seen it, but I'm looking forward to it. So that's our first day. And then moving ahead a little bit, Tuesday, Wednesday is also going to be a different schedule for us. Tuesday, we're using the 2-hour late schedule, but the kids are coming on time, and they're spending the first 2 hours of every day with their advisories. And then every hour has a different lesson built in. We're going to do bus safety 1 hour. We're going to do digital citizenship 1 hour. This was all set up by the building leadership team. Laura Queasley took the lead on this and has a great program put together for those first 2 days of school. And on Thursday, we hit the ground running with the academic part of the classes.
So, Chris, just having had a sixth grader last year with a seventh
Yep.
grader this year, I think one area of focus for the sixth graders on that orientation day, padlocks.
There's 1 hour committed to padlocks alone.
Very good.
Thanks.
First of all, I want to thank the school board. I know that you had to make a tough decision, and you approved a calendar that the high school principal really likes from the standpoint of getting the eighth graders 1 day early changes the whole year for those eighth graders. We bring them in, instead of having 1,276 students, which we have scheduled right now, we bring in those 263 students for a great experience. And so they start out in the morning with Kevin Gentz, and if you've ever seen Kevin Gentz in the morning, he is full of a ton of energy. Kevin has been working since last spring working with high school juniors and seniors to create this link crew, which we've been doing for years. And they really get to work with the eighth graders. The eighth graders get matched up with a upperclassman, so they always have someone to connect with. So if I ask my daughter who her link crew leader is, she knows who it is, still as a 10th grader, who that person is. And they're a person kids can go to throughout the year. They help them with the orientation, they help them figure out things in the building, they work with them as a group, but they also follow up with them academically, socially, and it's a contact for them. So they, Link Crew will wear their Link Crew t-shirts every once in a while, and you would be amazed on how the kids reach out to those Link Crew leaders. So we start out from 8 in the morning till noon, Link Crew activities, and most of it's run by the student leaders. Kevin gets them all pumped up and excited in the morning, and then we use the e-house and distribute them in small groups. They can talk about what Alberta High School is like and what does it mean to be at the high school and some of those type of things. At 12 o'clock, we run them through the scariest part for some of their parents is lunch. They're nervous, 400 and some kids at lunch. How is it going to work? The same way it did at Southwest. You put the number in, you just have a few more choices. So we have all the 8th graders go to lunch, and this year, the athletic department, activities department, with Kevin's support, has an activity extravaganza, so the kids know what's available. So those kids that might not have signed up are ready for athletics for the fall or extracurriculars. They can see what's happening in the fall, winter, and spring, really to try to get those 8th graders more involved in the high school. Then we will be handing out the Chromebooks to our 8th graders that day. Instead of them getting it when they pick up their schedule and all that, they'll pick theirs up on their 8th grade orientation day. And then we run about a 4-minute schedule, so they get to see their teacher's face. Now, we have 8th grade orientation on Wednesday the 15th already, so their parents have been able to come in. They've walked their schedule. This is just another face, meet the person at the door, greet them, make sure everybody's got names down, Anna versus Anna, and those type of things. So if, as you look in the fall at the new calendar, if I can convince you again to give me one day with the 8th graders, I'd greatly appreciate it out of everything else. I think the parents really appreciate it, the kids appreciate it. It takes the high school and the crowdedness of the first day of school away, so I think it makes a big difference for those kids.
Any questions?
How do you make Link Crew matches across different cultures and languages?
So what ends up happening is in the spring, first of all, they interview all the students that apply, and you have to apply to be on Link Crew. And then they go through and they sit down. Kevin goes through, last year he worked with Mindy Kruger. This year he's working with Gina Kleinert, and they go through and they try to make those connections. We also reach out to the Hollandale Christian students that are coming in as 9th graders and invite them. And so we try to make those matches. And then all the Link Crew leaders end up calling their link mate, I'd call them, and invite them. And that's where we find out different things. Like we find out a lot of times if there's a disability that we need to know about. So we make sure we have para support and things like that. And so it's through that communication and the information that we've gathered. So.
How many Link Crew members do you have on an annual basis, roughly?
Oh, I would say there's probably 30 to 40 kids at least. I mean, they really go about having small groups of kids. In the past, we've tried different things, like we did a football night one year where, Link Crew, but it's that getting the kids back to the building, so this works out much better. And then by providing transportation, a few years ago we did it where it was kind of a voluntary come in early. That makes it difficult for some of our kids that don't have transportation, so that's why having a day for just the 8th graders is so important.
Any other questions? Just a general comment on both the handbook and orientation. It's nice to see get the update, first of all, and also see the changes that are being made to always improve. I think that's an important part of what we need to do, and so thank you for all you've done in that. So our next item of business is the Hammerfield timeline update. Lori?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Funk, just to hit some highlights of how the project planning is coming along. We will be bidding out in separate chunks, basically, different parts of the project. So the date targets right now is that the Hammer Complex itself would be, that bid would be let on November 29th, Halverson Elementary, December 13th, and the high school gym HVAC and the pool locker room on October 30th. Well, they are working on separate RFPs for the demo of the bleachers and existing field house in early October. That's the first piece of the project that we can get going on right away. But that's the plan at the moment. Now, as far as the other parts of the plan, if you want to move on to the next screen, Ashley, there's different components of the plan development. Schematic design was first. We have completed the schematic design phase. Now we're on the design development phase. And that'll continue through mid-August. So by the end of next week, the architect will be ready to be developing the construction documents that would be used for the bid specifications. And then on the last page, this just breaks down for you. You can take a look at it at your leisure, but it just breaks down for you what we're looking at start and end dates for the different components of the project. And overall, we're looking at substantial completion. For example, the field house would be August 28th of 2019 with everything, the entire project. Our target date for completion is September 1st of 2019. Any questions?
Hey, just another thought on the parking lot for fair parking, if it's not ready. I mean, they could potentially put a sign out there and park them at Albert Lee High School, if we need to. That's just a thought.
Any questions or comments?
The other thing I was just going to comment, just to clarify, is the reason that we're chunking the project up is basically to get best pricing. So that way, certain contractors that specialize in certain types of things would just bid on that, and we feel we'll get best pricing that way.
Laura, did you mention that you would provide us with a copy of this? I get questions about what the schedule looks like and when certain parts of the project will be completed, and it'd be nice if we could get a copy of this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's a good idea. Any other questions or comments?
Actually, I guess that's a piece I should have clarified in the slide, and maybe we can amend it here, is that that piece is phased, the 2020, so that will be phased in. So that part takes more time to get developed.
Bob Furland has come to some of these meetings from the city, and so I'm sure that we can work something out with the city in Snyder Field if it comes to it.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Okay. Motion's been made and second. Meeting's adjourned.